You've been taught your whole life to look outside for answers. If something went wrong, the reason must be out there. If love left, the problem was probably the other person. If money dried up, it must be the market. If the body got sick, it had to be bad luck or genetics. Everything out there has been painted like the main character of the story, while your own mind and inner world have been treated like an afterthought, as if they don't really matter. But what if that's the biggest lie of all? What if the outside world isn't where things begin at all? What if what you're seeing is just the result, not the cause? This might shake everything you've believed so far, but it's the truth behind everything that keeps repeating. The things that show up in your life are not random. They're not there because of hard work, struggle, or some complicated system. They're there because of what's been accepted inside. Through imagination, through beliefs, through the way reality has been assumed to work. The world you see is yourself pushed out, not symbolically, but literally. What's playing out on the screen of your life is coming from the film reel running in your mind. The moment this truth is really felt, something shifts. You stop blaming, stop chasing, stop trying to manipulate the people, situations, or outcomes. You stop treating the world like a stubborn machine that won't give you what you want and start realizing it's a mirror that never lies. If something keeps showing up, a pattern, a struggle, a loss, it's because something inside is still holding on to that idea, still feeding it energy, still living in the assumption that it's real or that it defines who you are. But none of that has to stay. Not a single part of it. Because if it came from within, it can be changed from within. That's the power no one teaches. That there is no separation between what you feel inside and what shows up outside. The bridge between the two is imagination. And imagination is the only true reality. So if something different is wanted, not just hoped for, but truly accepted, it has to be lived internally first. Not in the future, not someday when it's safe, but now, before the eyes can even see it. That's the only way the world can reflect it back. And once you get that, life stops being random. It becomes deliberate, and you become free. Everything starts with imagination. Even the things that seem to just happen out of nowhere have roots in what's been entertained inside the mind. And that's the part most people don't realize. They think they're just reacting to life, but they're actually reacting to the results of what they've imagined over and over again. That's why nothing ever just appears out of thin air. It's always imagined first, whether someone is aware of it or not. Imagination isn't something passive or cute. It's the creative power behind every single thing that's ever happened. The mind is always building something, always running stories, always painting pictures, even if those stories are full of fear, doubt, and assumptions picked up from the past. When someone worries, they're imagining. When they rehearse how something might go wrong, they're imagining. When they think, "This always happens to me," they're imagining. And all of that is creating a seed. That seed becomes a pattern. That pattern becomes an experience. It doesn't mean anyone deserves pain or wanted struggle. It just means that imagination is the soil, and whatever is planted there will grow. Neville said to clothe the desire in the tones of reality. And that's not just poetic language, it's the whole process. When something is imagined with clarity, with sensory detail, with emotional conviction, and most importantly, with acceptance, it begins to feel real. And when it feels real, the subconscious accepts it as fact. That's the secret. It doesn't matter what's true right now in the outside world. What matters is what's accepted as true inside. The outer world is slow to catch up, but it always does. It's like a photograph slowly developing from a negative. The clearer the negative, the sharper the picture. And imagination is that negative. The more natural it feels to imagine having what's wanted, whether it's peace, connection, freedom, or success, the more quickly the outer world begins to mirror it. But this doesn't mean forcing feelings or pretending something is true when it feels false. It means gently living in the end. It means visiting the desired scene often enough that it starts to feel like home. When that imagined scene becomes more familiar than the current facts, change is already on the way. Imagination is not about escaping reality, it's about rewriting it. The world doesn't change by accident. It changes when the inner world changes first. And that change always begins with a single thought. This is already mine. That's when life starts bending to the new truth. Not because of force, but because of alignment. The world is not a random place. It only looks that way when imagination isn't understood. But the truth is, nothing in life ever shows up by accident. Every person met, every situation faced, every so-called coincidence, all of it is drawn into life based on inner patterns that have been playing in the background. Some of those patterns are loud and obvious, but others are quiet and deeply buried. And those are usually the ones creating the biggest loops. It's not because someone is broken or cursed or not trying hard enough. It's because the mirror doesn't lie. It doesn't show what's wanted. It shows what's accepted. The mind is like a projector, and the world is the screen. The scenes playing out are the result of what's been playing inside the mind on repeat, even if the conscious part of the mind has no idea it's happening. Beliefs picked up as a child, stories repeated over time, feelings that became habits, they all combine to form a picture of who someone believes they are. And then life steps in to reflect that picture back. This is why Neville kept reminding people that there's no one to blame and nothing to fight, because the world doesn't respond to blame, it responds to identity. And identity lives in the imagination. That's why a person can work hard to change their circumstances but still end up in the same place emotionally. Because they were trying to change the mirror instead of the face. They were trying to fix the world without ever touching the belief that was creating it. The beauty of this truth is that the mirror is not fixed. It doesn't hold grudges. It doesn't punish. It only reflects. So if something keeps showing up again and again, it's just showing what needs to be seen. That's not a problem, that's a gift. It means the mirror is working. And once it's understood that every trigger, every challenge, and even every heartbreak is just a reflection of something deeper, a shift begins to happen. That shift isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about asking a better question. What is this showing me about how I see myself? What story is being reflected here that I've been living from without even realizing it? When that question is asked with honesty, not with blame, but with curiosity, the mirror becomes a guide. It becomes a tool. And eventually, it becomes a friend. Because the world is no longer an enemy that needs to be fixed, it becomes feedback. And feedback is powerful, because it gives clues. It shows where alignment is off. It shows where the inner image is still living in lack, fear, or unworthiness. And when those images begin to change, not through force, but through gentle repetition, the mirror starts to soften. Life stops feeling so hard. The same world begins to reflect a different version of the self. And that's how transformation becomes real. Not because the world changed on its own, but because the inner world finally got the attention it deserved. One of the most freeing. And at the same time, most uncomfortable truths Neville ever taught is this: there's no one to change but self. It sounds simple, but it goes deep. Because if there's no one to change but self, it means there's no point trying to fix anyone else, force outcomes, or wait around for the world to behave differently. It means everything that shows up, good or bad, helpful or painful, is just playing the role that the inner self has cast for it. And that's hard to hear when the outer world feels like it's being unfair. But it's also the key to real, permanent change. Most people spend their lives trying to change the characters in their story. They want others to act differently, speak differently, love differently, understand them better, respect them more. But the characters aren't the cause. They're just the expression of an old belief. And until that belief is faced and rewritten, the story keeps looping. The faces might change, but the feeling stays the same. When Neville said no one to change but self, he wasn't talking about surface-level behavior. He wasn't saying to act kinder or smile more or fake positivity. He was pointing to the deeper self, the one doing the imagining, the one holding the state, the one choosing what to accept as true, even when it feels uncomfortable. Because whatever is accepted as true internally becomes the script, and the world can only reflect what the script tells it to. If someone imagines themselves as unlovable, even without realizing it, they'll draw in situations that confirm it. If someone assumes they're always overlooked, they'll find themselves left out again and again. It's not that life is trying to hurt them, it's that the state they're living in is attracting those outcomes. But here's the good news: those states are not permanent. They can be changed. And the moment they shift, the cast of the story shifts too. The outer world is like a stage, and the people on that stage are actors playing the roles that have been assigned to them by the inner world. Some are playing the villain, some the lover, some the teacher. But when the story inside the mind is rewritten, those actors either leave, change roles, or stop showing up altogether. That's not manipulation. That's alignment. So instead of trying to convince others to treat you differently, start by imagining yourself as already being the version who is respected, loved, supported, or secure. Instead of waiting for someone to change the assumption about who you are in relation to them. Because the only person who can shift the story is the one writing it, and that's always been you. Not the reactive version, but the imaginer, the one with the pen. And once that pen is picked up consciously, life stops repeating and starts unfolding. When the truth finally lands, that the outer world is a reflection, not a cause, something begins to shift inside. It might not be loud at first, but it's powerful. Because the moment that truth is accepted, the waiting ends. There's no more need to wait for someone to show up, for a condition to be perfect, or for a sign to arrive. The power has been located, and it's been inside the whole time. That realization is like waking up. Suddenly, all the old efforts to chase, beg, please, or prove feel heavy and unnecessary. Because if the world is responding to an inner image, then trying to fix the outside is like painting over a mirror hoping the face will change. It just doesn't work. But what does work is reshaping the image within, deciding, right now, to occupy the version of self that already has what's been wanted. This doesn't mean forcing fake feelings or pretending to be happy. It means gently returning to the inner scene, the one where the desire is already fulfilled, the one where the version of self is already confident, secure, and complete, and living from that scene over and over until it becomes natural. Not as a one-time visualization, but as a way of being. That's what Neville meant by living in the end. It's not about hoping something will happen. It's about knowing it already has and choosing to think, feel, and act from that knowing. When the inner state becomes consistent, the outer world has no choice but to follow. That's not a maybe, it's a law. The bridge of incidents will begin to form. People will move, events will shift, opportunities will line up. But none of that needs to be figured out. The how is not your job. The state is. And once the state is held long enough, the bridge builds itself. That's how miracles happen. Quietly, naturally, sometimes slowly, but always faithfully. This is not magic. It's imagination. And imagination is creation. So the choice is always available, to stay in the old story or write a new one. The world won't judge either way. It'll just keep reflecting what's inside. But once someone starts living from the version of self that feels whole, loved, powerful, and safe, without needing proof first, everything outside begins to mirror that version. Not because of effort, but because of alignment. And the best part is, this is available now. Not tomorrow. Not when it's convenient. Not when the world changes. No, because if the world is yourself pushed out, then the moment you shift, the world does too. That's not theory. That's the truth. And living from that truth is what reshapes everything. So if the world really is just reflecting you, the question isn't when it will change, it's who you're willing to be right now. Let that version lead the way, and watch everything follow. If this clicked for you, drop a comment and let me know. What old story are you ready to rewrite, starting today?